The use of weapons of mass destruction against Alexander Litvinenko, the Skripal family, and most recently Alexei Navalny, who is currently in prison, is a daring challenge to the world community. It cannot go unanswered. A sanctions mechanism for human rights abusers and their families already exists. It was created in the US and was taken into consideration by Canada, the UK, the EU, and a number of other countries. Officially, this mechanism is enshrined in the so-called Magnitsky Law, named after tax auditor Sergei Magnitsky.
He was arrested on trumped-up charges in 2009 after blowing the whistle on a massive tax fraud that implicated officials in Vladimir Putin's government.
He uncovered a staggering corruption scheme in Russia and was basically tortured to death while awaiting trial. He was originally charged with fraud and locked up in a prison in Moscow to send a message to his employees to back off. The Russian government denied him basic medical care, and he died in prison in horrific pain. Under the Magnitsky Act, the US has already blacklisted an extensive list of Russians. All their American assets were frozen, and they were barred from entering the US.
Nothing can bring back Sergei Magnitsky. But there are things we can do to honor his memory. We can hold accountable those who violate the most basic human rights.
This act became a crucial tool in deterring the Russian leadership from pursuing repressive and unconstitutional policies against their own people. This mechanism, though, is in urgent need of clarification, improvement, and expansion. An investigation into the attempt on Alexei Navalny's life revealed that Russian security services were directly responsible. One of the perpetrators even admitted to it during a recorded conversation.
The agent from an elite toxins team in Russia's FSB security agency revealed details of how Navalny was poisoned in August.
He explained what we all now know. Human rights violations in Russia are not carried out spontaneously. They are a deliberate state policy endorsed by Russian President Vladimir Putin and supported by Russia's elites. Sanctions only targeting rank-and-file perpetrators won't solve anything. They must be complemented by sanctions against the people at the top, the people making money off human abuse and corruption. Above all, we need special sanctions against the financial backers of this criminal regime. The Kremlin's repressive policies always seem to stem from corruption. Human rights abuses, corruption, and criminality go hand in hand in Russia. Putin has at his disposal a huge shadow budget filled with corrupt and dirty money. This money is spent on personal luxury, clandestine lobbying of Western countries, and the systematic destruction of Russia's own democratic institutions. Anyone giving, moving, or hiding corrupt Russian money needs to be held accountable. It's more and more clear that the sponsors of Putin's regime should be treated the same as criminals, members of a criminal gang. This criminal community uses weapons of mass destruction to eliminate their opponents. Western countries already have plenty of experience when it comes to tracing criminal-linked financial networks. The main problem the West is facing is that they need the cooperation of Russian law enforcement to combat cross-border money laundering and corruption. The irony, of course, is that Russian law enforcement is as guilty as anyone. Numerous attempts to poison regime opponents, the current imprisonment of Alexei Navalny. How many examples of a European mafia state do we need before we can decide to act? This level of disregard for universally accepted democratic norms and values cannot go without an adequate response from the international community. Last week, the US and EU imposed new sanctions on mid- and senior-level officials, along with 13 companies and entities, most of which were involved in the production of biological and chemical agents. The EU is expected to announce even more sanctions in the coming future.
That the United States is working closely with our closest allies and partners in Europe to make clear that this kind of behavior is not acceptable.
These sanctions are a good start, but as with all previous ones, they still don't target the key supporters of Putin's regime, and most likely won't change how Putin conducts business.
This week urges EU leaders to use the new human rights sanctions mechanism known as the European Magnitsky Act to target the Nord Stream 2 pipeline project and to include the Russian president's wealthy inner circle.
It's a question of impunity and political will. Everyone knows who's pulling the strings in Russia. The question is, will the West ever stand up directly to Putin? Legislation protecting human rights needs to be smart, not just idealistic. It isn't enough to sanction a few foot soldiers or the innocent Russian people. Putin's regime is propped up by corrupt money and will remain strong as long as that money continues to flow in. Targeting that shadow budget should be the #1 focus of all Russian sanctions.